Welcome to Crack It. Today in this video we are going to discuss on how we are going to implement Java bean mapping in a Spring Boot application using MapStructs. So we are going to discuss about the benefits of using MapStruct in a Java application, and we are going to see how we can use it in our Spring Boot application for mapping the fields from different APIs or mapping the entity to the DTOs, and what are the benefits of using MapStruct in an application. So this has become a very popular interview question, like how are you mapping the fields from the different APIs in your endpoint, or how are you mapping your entity to DTO in your Java implementation. So this has become a popular interview question, and that's the reason I'm doing this video, and I have explained a code demo as well, live code demo as well. So let's start the discussion on why are we using MapStruct, what is the use of the MapStruct, what are the benefits of it, how can we use it in a Java application, how can we use it in a Spring application. So let's start the discussion. So what is a MapStruct? So why do we need the MapStruct as well? So in our daily coding life, we know that we should not expose our entity classes to the outside world. So always what we will do, we will uh, convert our entities into the DTOs, and we will expose only those data transfer objects to the outside world. Similarly, when I get if I'm working in a REST application, my in my post mapping, my request body will be a JSON which is of DTO, and I need to convert that DTO to entity to save that data to the database. So in that case, we always write a mapper classes wherein we will have a method to convert our DTO to entity and an entity to a DTO. So to simplify that, Java introduced a library which is nothing but a MapStruct. So what will it do? If you just add the annotations, it will generate the code for you. It is a very straightforward and a easy to library that Java has introduced. So MapStruct is a Java code generation library that simplifies the implementation of mapping between Java bean types. If the names in both the DTOs and the entities is same, then you have to do nothing. You just add that at mapper annotation to your class and you can just use it. The mapper will generate the code to convert your DTO to our entities. Anyways, we are going to see that with a live example, but that is what it is. So to simplify our implementation of mapping between the Java bean types, we are using this MapStruct. So it is used to convert our data transfer objects to entities and entities to DTOs. And if you want to convert your any custom Java objects, it's straightforward. You can use the MapStructs. And why, what is the benefits of using the MapStruct? So it is like it is generating the code during the compile time itself. So during the compilation itself, you will get to know if there is any errors. So since MapStruct is generating the code for you, you can avoid writing the boilerplate mapping code. There's no need for you to explicitly write a mapper which will map your entity to DTO or DTO to entity. So the compiler, the Java, will generate it for you. So the next important benefit is customization. So we can define custom mapping logic for certain fields when needed. So if suppose I need to add a condition saying that if only a specific field is true, then map it. So for that specific custom mapping logic as well, we can add it in our MapStruct. So I'll show it to you in the example. I'm just giving you what are the benefits of the MapStruct now. Anyways, we are going to see all these benefits with a live code demo. And if you so that we can made any customization if we don't want to rely on the MapStruct's automatic behavior for the simple field mappings. Then next comes the null handling. So for all of which null pointer exception or null handling is a difficult thing. Yes, MapStruct helps us to configure how it needs to handle the null values. Either it needs to set default null values, or it should ignore the null fields. So how do we want our mapper to behave? If there is like any null fields, please ignore it. So there's an annotation or which if we add, it will just ignore those null fields. So if there is any if there is there's a DTO and there's no field coming from the DTO, but I need to set in my entity that null Then also there is an annotation which we can add, which will helps us to set default values. So all these things, all this null handlings can be done by the MapStructs. Next is type safe. Since it is all this code generation is happening in the compile time, the compiler can catch issues like type mismatches or missing fields. The compiler will throw an compilation error, and that will tell us that the specific field is missing, so that it will be easy to catch those annotations during the compile time only and not during the runtime. Then easy integration. So it's very easy. It's, even though it is a Java code generation library, we can easily use it in the Spring framework. Even in our example, we are going to use it in the Spring framework only. And if you have any standalone mapper that you want to develop, yes, you can go ahead and develop as a standalone mapper as well. If you want to use it in a framework, you can use it in the framework. If you want to use it in a standalone application, you can use it in a standalone application. All these are the benefits of using the MapStruct. Let's now deep dive into the code and let's try to understand what this MapStruct is and how we can use it in the Java code. So this is the code demo that I'm going to use. We are going to write only the code for the mappers and the rest is already there. I'm going to reuse an already existing demo which I have used it for the data JPA test. So what is data JPA test? Data JPA test is an annotation that we use to write the unit test cases for the repository classes. So if you have any repository and if you're going to test it, you can test that repository using the add data JPA test annotation. So I'm going to use the same demo. If you want a detailed video on how you can test your repository classes, we already have a video for it. I will provide the link here so that you can, if you want, you can go understand how we can write unit test cases for the repository classes. So for now, I'm going to use the same demo. So let's try to understand what is in this controller. So if you see here, I have a get mapping, and in that get mapping, I'm passing the employee ID. So using that employee ID, that is going as a path variable, and using that employee ID, I'm going to my database and I'm trying to extract the employee using the employee ID. So if you see here, I have written an @query annotation, which is a JPQL annotation. So I have written like select star from employee, where e.employee ID is equal to the employee ID that I am getting from my request. So all well and good. So this is my repository class. Using this repository, I am going to fetch the entity of this employee. So after fetching the entity of the employee, what I am doing, I'm just sending it to the controller. But before that, if you see here, I have a method which is nothing but map employee entity to DTO. So this is a mapper that I have written. So wherein I've taken the employee entity and I'm mapping each of the employee entity to my employee DTO. So that is what I'm doing here. So in this example, what are we going to do? We are going to get rid of this entire code and we are going to write a mapper, and that mapper in turn is going to generate the code for me. So this map employee entity to DTO, who will write this code? My mapper will write this code. So let's see it, how it is doing that job. So in our service class, we have a method where we are mapping our entity class to DTO. So what I'm going to do is I'll just delete this method and let's see how this code is being generated by the MapStruct. So for that MapStruct to work, we need to add a dependency, and that dependency is nothing but the org MapStruct dependency, and I have taken the latest version. And to generate the classes, we need to add these plugins in our code. Previously it was not there, but in the plugins I have added this plugin, which is nothing but the Maven compiler plugin. So during the compilation time, I'm requesting Maven to create the maps to process the MapStructs. So if you see here, I have added this MapStruct processor, and this MapStruct processor in turn will create the map processing for me. So I'll just explain you after I have added the code. It will be easy for me. So for the mapper, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new package, and I'm going to say that mapper as a mapper, and inside that mapper again I'm going to create a Java class, and I'm going to call it as an employee mapper. So in my employee mapper, sorry, it should be the interface. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to add at mapper annotation, and I need to define the component model. So my component model is going to be Spring. So I'll add that Spring as well. So that's it. So I have added my mapper with name employee mapper, and I'm using the framework as the Spring framework. Inside it, I'm going to add a method. So what method I'm going to add? Map entity to DTO. So I'm going to add a method which is going to convert the entity to the DTO object. So I have to pass DTO as the request. So what is my DTO? What is my request? So employee DTO is my request. So I'm going to add that employee DTO, and I need to return an entity. What is that entity? So what I'm going to return, so I am going to map entity to DTO. So my request will be this thing, employee, and my return type will be employee DTO class. So I'll import this as well. So I now have a method which is going to map my employee entity to employee DTO. So let's go check what is inside my employee DTO. Employee ID, employee name, phone number, department ID and age. And let's open the entity as well and check what its names are. Employee ID, employee number, phone number, department ID and age. Looks like the fields are with the same name inside my DTO and inside my entity as well. So if it's different name, we need to do something. I'll explain that to you later in this video, but for now the names are similar, so there's no need for me to write anything else. So I'll come to my service class, and it's complaining me saying that this method is not there. So what I'm going to do, I'll just copy this name here, I'll add it, and this is not in my it is going to be my mapper, and I am going to add my employee mapper dependency here. So that's it. So it's in my mapper : employee entity dot DTO. So here as well the same thing, I need to call mapper dot map entity to DTO, and here as well mapper dot map entity to DTO. So that's it, the code changes are done. So previously I had a method, explicitly I have written it, which was mapping my entity to DTO. For now I don't have any method. Instead I have created an interface, and that interface I'm going to pass the entity object, and that is going to return me the DTO object. Who will write code for that? My org-strat map will write the code for me. Let's test it quickly. So I'll start the application. So in our YouTube channel, we have discussed lots of topics based on the subscribers' interest. So if you want to discuss any specific topics, please let me know in the comment section. I will discuss it for sure. So you have like many playlists wherein we have a separate interview questions for Java, separate interview questions for the Hibernate. There is this dedicated interview playlist for the Spring Cloud. So similarly, we have a playlist for Spring security architecture. We have a specific playlist for microservices. So we tried to cover all the possible interview questions for Java, Java 8, microservices, RESTful web services, SpringBoot interview questions, Spring interview questions, and we have a crash course for Spring security as well, wherein how are we using JWT in authentication and authorization. We have a video on how to connect multiple databases in one Spring Boot application where we have multiple tenants. So we have explained the Spring security 6 architecture as well. So we have lots of videos through which you can understand and learn Java. And also if you want a specific topic to be discussed, as told earlier, please let me know in the comment section. We will discuss it for sure. So the application has started. There is no issues. You can see that started application, and I want to show you one thing, so which is nothing but, if you see here, after started my application, this target folder called target folder generated, and inside the target folders you can see that there is a folder called annotations, and inside that you can see a class named employee mapper implementation. So inside this employee mapper implementation, you can see that this is implementing employee mapper. So the interface that we wrote, this interface is employee mapper interface, and this employee mapper implementation is implementing this interface. And you can see that it is a generated code by the org MapStruct mapping processor. So my org MapStruct has created this class for me, and it has added at component annotation. It is because I have mentioned that the component model is equal to string, and that's the reason it has added at component annotation as well. And inside that, you can see that this org strat has created code for me. So if the employee entity is null, it will just return null. It will not go till here, so that it will throw the null pointer exception. If suppose there is no values coming for me from the employee, so it's just initializing these values, so and assigning that values to this employee dot get employee id and employee name. And then for the DTO, since it's a record, so since it's a DTO, so it is just calling the constructor that is present for that specific record DTO, and it is returning that employee DTO object. So this is how it's writing the code. So previously we had a method wherein we mapped all these stuffs. Instead, this org MapStruct is doing it for us. So in real world production applications, we have to do lots of mappers for even for a single application. Let's assume I have an API which is calling 3 different endpoints of 3 different APIs. So I have to map all those responses to my response. So for all those scenarios, instead of me writing these piece of code, who will do it for me? So org MapStruct will do for me. So this MapStruct is really a boon to the developers, wherein this will generate code instead of we writing the code. So our code is working fine. So we can prove that by just running. So we can prove that using the call postman as well, but we can prove it using this class as well. You can see this generated class. So in this class, the code that we are expecting is present. So it's getting all the values from the employee, assigning it to a variable and passing all those variables to this employee DTO record. This is what we want to do. So let's assume a scenario wherein if I want to map the employee name only if it starts with S. So how can I add that condition to that mapper? Let's now see how we can do it using this mapper itself. So we have started our application. Let's now test it in Postman as well. So I'll go to the Postman, and if I give like send, we can see that our code is working fine, and we are now able to get our employee ID, employee number, phone number, department, and age. And age is null. Let's try to see whether we are passing values to age or not. So I'll come here, and we have a config class for the data configuration, wherein we are passing the employee name but not age, and that's the reason we are not getting the age. Let's assume if I'm passing age as 32 here, and here the age is like 22, and if I build it, I'll stop it, I'll start the application again, and let's see, yeah, the application is started. I'll go to Postman, and if I send it, now we are getting values for the ages as well. So it's well and good, our mapping is working perfectly fine, so no issues. So what are we going to do? We are going to now change our code to map only if the employee name starts with AS. So but my employee name here, none of them is starting S. So what should I get? I should get null in this employee name field. So let's write code for that. So I'll go to the IntelliJ, I'll stop it, and I'll go to my mapper, and here I need to add at mapping annotation. So for what field I'm going to add for what field I'm going to add it? I'm going to add it for the employee name field. So what it needs to do, if the condition, and the condition is if the employee name dot starts with S, then this mapping should happen. So I need to add something called as conditional expression here. So conditional expression, I'll just give, conditional expression. Oh, I didn't put comma, that's the reason it's not coming up. So I'll put conditional expression, and in the conditional expression I need to mention it as Java. It is because I'm going to write a Java code. And what is my Java code? If by employee dot get employee name starts with, since that is a string, I'm using that what is it, strings method. So starts with S, then only map it. If not, don't map it. That's what I have written. So what I'll do is I'll start the application. So something is missing. If you see here, this is the generated class. That is where it is throwing me the compilation error. It is because this if this braces isn't closed. So I have to go to my employee class and I have to add one more brace. Then I'll run the application, and if we go check our code, there is a condition for the employee name alone. When is this employee name mapping is happening? Only if my employee name starts with S, then my employee name is mapped to employee dot get name. Else it is not mapping it at all. It is null by default. So you can see here it is null by default. So that code has generated now. And if we go to our Postman and verify that as well, so currently we have employee name with Cracket and Techie Talks, and if I do this, my employee name becomes null. So we can add, like we can customize our code as well using this mapper. So if you have like one more condition wherein you want to map some constant fields to your values, let's assume I'm giving it as target, and for my age, so always don't take it from the source, but instead use this constant value 42. So if I give like this, let's see what happens if I start my application. So you can see that always the age is 42, and that 42 will be sent to the DTO. So like this also we can do. So if we have any specific condition wherein we want to set always the default value or a constant value to it, we can do it by using this constant here, and we need to provide the target here, for meaning for which specific field. So for some field we will get the username from the headers, and we need to use it for the updated by column if we are going to map our DTO to the entity. So in all those scenarios we can do that. So we can add one more parameter here. Let's assume like string user ID, let's say, and I'm like getting these values from my headers, and I'm passing it to my entity to save that value to my updated by column or created by column. So in such scenarios, what I'll do is I'll create a mapping, and I will say the target as what is it, created by column. So for my created by column, use this value user ID. So like that I'll give. So constant equals this user ID, whatever I am getting from here. So I need to pass like that, so that sorry, instead of constant I need to give it a source, my bad. So I need to provide it as user ID. So it will take the value of this user ID and it will populate it to the created by column. So like this we have to do. So we can customize this mappers if we want to. It's very easy. So we can do any type of customization in this mapper and make it work like a actual code we write. So it is more simple than the actual mapper. It is because this org stretch will create code for us, so that it will be easy for us to maintain the code as well. So it is easy for, it's reducing number of lines of code, it's reducing the boilerplate code. So it's very easy and very handy if we know org MapStruct, if we use org MapStruct in our Spring application. In your interviews, you can expect a question like, how are you mapping your responses from other APIs in your API or in your endpoint? So in your endpoint, you may call 3 different APIs, and how are you mapping those values from the 3 different APIs to your API? How are you doing that response mapping from the other APIs in your API? You may expect a question like this: what technique are you using to map the fields? So usually currently in the real-time production world, everyone is using MapStructs, and no one is like explicitly writing the code. So it's always good to say that you are using MapStruct in your application, and you can explain few benefits that we explained during the start of this video. And also you can even explain more about the MapStructs on how you can use the conditional expressions or the constants or using the default values, so that they will know that you have better understanding of the MapStructs. So this is how you have to answer this interview question. Thanks for watching Crackit. Please like, comment, and subscribe for more videos. So if you want any specific topics to be discussed, please let me know in the comment section. We will discuss it for sure. And please share it with your friends who are preparing for their interviews. Thank you.